Hi, I am Jennifer Griffin, Director of Family Support at the LGS Foundation, and this is
Diana Smaglick, and I'm a mom.
and the important thing is she did not say I'm just a mom, because don't you hate it when people do that? Okay, so we're here today to talk about the early years, and Diana, why don't you do?
Oh, I'm first.
Yeah.
This is cool. So I think many of you have had the opportunity today to meet Billy. He is not bashful. You may have noticed that as he's walking through. But so the reason that I got into the work that I do, and I am the manager of a statewide program in Pennsylvania who works with families and individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism, is because of the young man that you see before you. And he is an amazing person. He just turned 38, which is the second thing that he will tell you immediately upon meeting you. Hi, I'm Billy. I just had my birthday. I'm 38 years old. That's exactly what he will tell you. But Billy is an amazing person. And part of the reason that I tell you that is because there were times that we didn't think that Bill was going to be 38 years old. And we were told when he started seizing, right, see that bottom picture there with the cute little overalls and the curly hair? That's right before he started having his first seizures at 4 years old. And we were told at that point, 6 months in, that he would not see his 6th birthday and that we should start making plans. And so our world kind of came crumbling down. And we figured at that point that we didn't have a world to look forward to. Knowing now what I know, I would think I would have handled a lot of things differently in my life. Because if you look at these pictures, this is an amazing man with an amazing life, and we have had a wonderful ride. It has not been easy, and we'll talk a lot about that. There's been some wonderful things as well as some really hard times. We're not going to sugarcoat things too much today. But you can see him with his new nephew. You see him with his tattoo. If you ask, he will show you his tattoo. His brothers all have tattoos. He has 5 brothers. They all have tattoos. This is his pose to attract women. It obviously worked, because that's his girlfriend in the next frame. She has a heart on her face because I didn't have her permission to show her picture. And the bottom picture is a picture of Billy in the hospital where he spent quite a bit of his life. But I will tell you, he is the strongest, most resilient person I have ever met. And I am very fortunate to know him and to love him. He's a great guy. So, my colleague.
All right. Next. Okay, so that's me, Jen Griffin, and of course, I'm really, really happy that you talked about Billy and all the wonderful things about him, because I think in the early years, you know, one of the things we get lost in is the label, and we are labeling our kids by their diagnosis instead of their name and who they are and what makes them exceptional and wonderful. And it really depends on, you know, where your focus is, and let's face it, in those early years, your focus is on a lot of stuff that you're in the information gathering stage, and you're also just trying to process the diagnosis. So it feels like they become the diagnosis. So this is Theo in various stages of his life. Hey now, in various stages of his life, and he has 2 big sisters who absolutely adore him. And, you know, he is one of the kids that started with infantile spasms. So it's nice that the 2 of us have, you know, I have a very early age onset for seizures with Theo and infantile spasms. And Diana and Billy, of course, his seizures started a little bit later. So you can see that we came at it from different places, and sometimes the parents who are dealing with kids who have later onset seizures are seeing things that happened that went away, like some skills and all of that. And in Theo's case, I'm not grieving anything that we've lost, because they're the things that he hasn't lost things. He's made progress, but he is still very, very delayed. But at least I don't have to sort of grieve the loss of certain skills. So, we're going to talk today about a lot of different things in these early years that we have to contend with. And the first thing we're going to start with are, all of these systems. And let's get that out of the way with, right? Because that is not fun. So we, of course, have to deal with the medical system. And, you've got your doctor and specialists and healthcare professionals. And we're going to talk a little bit later. This is going to be somewhat interactive. We're going to talk a little bit later about who might be on your particular team. But the part that really gets us a lot is, this part, right? Who's paying for all of this stuff? And you become a very maybe frustrated and maybe just very knowledgeable. And I don't know, the insurance companies, they're a special breed of company. They sometimes, somebody once said that, they're just in the denial business, and it feels like that sometimes. But, how to navigate these systems, and who teaches you how to navigate these systems? Anybody? Who said that? Yeah, yourselves, right? Yeah. A lot of that we've had to learn on our own. Is everybody familiar with Kids Waiver? Kidswaivers.org. This website, these slides will be available, and this is also being recorded, but if you want to make some notes and check out some things, some resources on your phone at some point, hopefully after we've finished talking, this is very good because it gives you a state-by-state overview of where you can get Medicaid waivers. And then, of course, there are other payers, and it really depends on what state you live in. I live in California, and we have a regional center system, and we have something called California Children's Services. And if you live in California, I got your back. I can hook you up. I know. But you know what? I am the director of family support for the entire LGS Foundation, and people will reach out to me and ask me about, well, how are things in Minnesota? And I'll say, I don't know, because I don't live there. But I love looking and researching, but we also have ambassadors. So we can find somebody who lives in Minnesota and hook you up. And also there's also our Facebook support group, and find somebody that lives in your state who you can maybe use as a mentor. Because I think we all need, I've had mentors, I'm sure you did, Diana, and and we're willing to be that for you as well, and find a mentor for you if we are not enough of that for you. Denials, as I mentioned, ick. They're terrible, and it's part of the whole process. Like, we're all going through a bunch of emotional stuff, and we're going through these frustrations. That I can really guide you on sometimes. I said I can sometimes. And prior authorizations, do you guys know what those are? Okay, so for anybody who has a child, how many of you have children under the age of 4? 4 or under, How about under the age of 10? Or 4 to 10? And then anybody over 10? Okay, so every January, I go to the pharmacy to pick up my son's medications. Every once in a while, they'll say, oh, this is denied by your insurance. And I'll say, well, how could it be? He's been on it for 5 years. It's because all of a sudden they require a prior authorization, right? And that's just a brand new fun thing that usually happens at the beginning of the year. Yes. Yes, sure. Sure.
So Jen made a really good point about Medicaid and the waivers. If you don't know what Medicaid is like in your state, look it up. Different states have different qualifications for Medicaid. You may not think you qualify, but you may, and there may be exceptions within your state for certain types of disabilities. Certain disabilities qualify automatically. Mm-hmm. Certain ones do not. Certain states have loopholes or ways that you can fit in. Other states do not. And sometimes you can petition to be put in. Also with waivers.
Yes. Oh, well, so is this working too? Yes. So with kidswaivers.org too, that is exactly what it does. That website, it goes state by state. So you just have to plug in your state, because some have a Katie Beckett waiver. They might have a Tefra waiver. They call it different names in different states. So look up your state and see what the waiver is. And of course, like Diana said, in some states there are waiting lists, and I think that's horrible. But that is the way it is. You might as well hold that one, and I'll just speak into this one. Okay, so who's heard of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA? So IDEA is a federal law, and in 1975 it was the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, and then it eventually became IDEA. And it's broken into 4 parts, A, B, C, and D. I have no idea what A and D are. And for whatever reason, C comes before B. But IDEA Part C is what they call early start. Sometimes it goes by early intervention in other states. It might have different names, but it's all part of the same law. So, we go to the doctor every 3 months with our children when they're infants, and maybe for the first year or 2 years of their life. And what they're looking at those stages is they're looking for developmental milestones. Because a developmental milestone, children kind of, sort of, need to be hitting certain milestones at certain ages. And of course, if you have other children, you know that you went to the doctor and they measured their head and they weighed them and they asked how their appetite is and that kind of stuff. And then, at around the age of 6 months, they might say, oh, are they starting to sit up unassisted, and so on and so forth. So if your child isn't doing some of these things, then what you would do is you would hopefully be referred by your doctor to, and if they haven't started having seizures, or if they are having seizures, but it's something like maybe infantile spasms, like Morgan, you were talking about yesterday, and the doctor hasn't really figured it out yet because it is rare and it's not something that doctors see all the time. There are doctors, pediatricians, that will go their entire career without having, seen infantile spasms, so they might think it's colic or something else, and they might misdiagnose it. But the other clue would be maybe they're missing some developmental milestones. So then they will be assessed. There's usually some sort of an entity in every state that oversees early intervention, the birth to 3 stage of their life. And they will assess them, and then they will develop something called an IFSP, which is an Individualized Family Service Plan. And this is really important. The F in IFSP is family. So people think, well, it's not about me. I hate to be mentioning the fact that, I'm not getting a lot of sleep, and I haven't had a shower all week, and I'm truly crying all the time, and my other children are being neglected. I'm a horrible mom. That kind of thing. Well, that's important information. They have to help the whole family. They have to try to embrace everybody and make sure that, because if you're not doing well, your child's not going to do well. So never be afraid to sort of speak up if you're not doing well, because it's important for everybody to know this throughout the journey, by the way. I say never keep your personal stuff to yourself because you don't want to bother other people. And then you're going to, it's a very overwhelming stage, as many of you have already experienced, right? You're introduced to this new language, like I put down here, proprioception. And, some of these OTs and PTs and speech therapists, they love to use the lingo, like, and they don't explain it to you. And somebody kept talking about Theo's proprioception, and I nodded because I thought I must be stupid because I don't know what that is, but I don't want to come off as not really smart, so I'll just kind of nod, or stimming. A lot of our kids stim, right? They have stimming behaviors, rocking, flapping their hands. and all these other words that start to become part of our vocabulary. Alphabet soup. But then at the age of 3, of course, it becomes IDEA Part B, and that is special education, right? And the law says 3 to 22, although for whatever reason, some states only go to 21, which is really, I don't understand it, but I don't understand how that is. Somehow there must be something in the statute that says they can do that. But I know in California where I live, it's 22, and my son just turned 22 2 weeks ago, so guess what? We don't know. It's a whole new ball game. But an IEP is an individualized education plan, and what will happen is when your child is 2.5, they will have a meeting with the team of people that are with you, right? And there might be the OT and the PT and the speech therapist and the psychologist, the school, the administrators at the school district, and they get you together and they prepare you for preschool. So they'll have preschool services for them at the age of 3, and an IEP, it's really important that you know, and we're going to go, that there are 13 eligibility categories, and I can't name them all off. I mean, I probably could name most of them, but I know there could be things like multiple disabilities or orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, deaf blindness. Those are like 3 different categories. Intellectual disability, and so a lot of our kids, fall into multiple categories, and every 3 years, what they do is they reassess them. So you will sit down with this group, and I'm going to go through a bit of the IEP process. It's going to be super not exciting, but it's a really important thing to know. And I'm going to do it right now, actually. Oh, FAP and LRE. Does anybody know what those terms mean? Okay, your school sometimes love to just say things to you like, well, this is our offer of FAPE. What they mean is free, appropriate public education. That's what IDEA says in the law. A free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Whatever that means, right? And when I say whatever that means, you need somebody to explain to you what that means. And we hope that somebody will explain to you what that means. So here we have it. This is the IEP. And as you can see, this is your IEP team. And so what's going to happen right now is Diana's going to maybe chart a few things, right? Because this is a sample of an IEP team. And there's the parent and the therapist and the special education teacher and so on and so forth. And I wanted to throw it out to you guys and maybe say, ask you, who is on your IEP team? Who do you bring with you to your IEP? Does anybody want to? Or your IFSP. I don't think we have anybody with children under 3 here, do we? No, or if you did go to your IFSP, maybe, who do you think you would want to bring with you to an IEP? Yourself? Okay. You're sure. And who else do you think is on that team? Like, who do you think would be? So this is a really interesting point, and I'm glad you said it like that, because you said you wouldn't bring anybody but yourself. The IEP team, and this is where people get into difficulty with IEPs, is that the team is every single person that is interacting with your loved one, right? So who do you expect to be on that team? It would be you and the teacher, and who else is on your team, like all the therapists, perhaps? The nurse, the school nurse, speech therapists, yeah. And I'm glad that you said that it's just you, because a great piece of advice that I'm probably going to give later in another slide, but I'm giving it away now, is that I would suggest bringing someone with you, like a friend or a family member, only because it's overwhelming and we are taking in a lot of information and we feel like we're kind of being talked at. And so I would suggest having somebody there just kind of silently note-taking, because they're taking notes as well. The school district, they have a representative who's taking notes. But you want to make sure that the things that are relevant to you are captured in the notes. And so just, you might want to have somebody doing all of that so that you can fully be present in that meeting, perhaps, right? You were saying about who's on your team too, Cass? Okay. So it's a representative, that's a good, so every state does have a different sort of setup. But a lot of us have agencies that represent families that might have case managers, right? So I know in California it's called the Regional Center System, and we have a service coordinator, but it's the same idea. It's a case manager or a social worker or whatever you want to call it, but somebody who is really working with your family outside of the school system. So you can invite anybody you want to attend an IEP meeting with you. There's some people bring advocates, right? Now, a note of caution when it comes to advocates, a lot of advocates are paid. And sometimes a really good advocate, a paid advocate can be great. But you hope that it's somebody that is not working to keep the fight going, but somebody who's working towards resolution, because I think a lot of what Diana and I are going to be talking about in this whole session is that we want to make your lives easier because it's hard already. So anybody and anything that kind of adds to your stress level, we want to figure out how to make that not be a thing, right? Okay, so there are a lot of different people on your IEP team. So here's a really quick overview about how the IEP process works, because in my previous job, I was an advocate for, I worked in a family resource center. I worked with families who had kids with disabilities, and I was often called, I was constantly going to IEPs, and we were not paid advocates. We actually were employees of an organization, and part of what we did in our role was support families. So therefore, it was not in my interest to keep the fight going. We could keep it going, or we could actually try to resolve things. And resolution is a really important thing. And I think that also, it's, I don't know, a lot of the time people forget at the very center, at the IEP team, at the very center, that really should not say the IEP team. I think it should say your child's name. That's what's at the center of all of this. I actually have told this story many times, but I had a dad who said to me once, "Whose side are you on anyhow?" And I said, "I'm on your child's side. I am not there to be, if you don't like the teacher and the teacher doesn't like you and you don't like the speech therapist and blah, 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 I don't care if you like me, and it's nice if we could have nice, friendly interactions, and I usually have had good interactions with people, but ultimately, it's not about me, and it's not about the teacher. It's as long as we are all talking about the student and making sure it's all about what they need. So the whole process works with, it starts at the bottom, it starts with present levels. That you introduce yourself and you say, "Hi, my name is, and I am Theo's mother, and here's where Theo's at these days." And I give them a little bit of an overview about, "Oh yeah, he seems to be really a lot more alert these days, and his walking is really good, but he is having a lot more seizures, and he's really tired a lot." And that's important information, right? And he's not sleeping at night like he was for a while, and now he's not, and how that's impacting the family is one thing. How that's impacting how his day is going to look is really huge, right? So then everybody goes around and does that. all the specialists, everybody, because they are his team. And then we get into, okay, so we've talked about all of these present levels. Now what we have to do is set some goals. And we need to say, okay, we need to get a little bit more physical therapy in him. If Theo's doing more walking, or if he's really getting on his feet and he's strong, then we want to make sure that we're setting some like vigorous, maybe really ambitious goals for him. But if Theo's not doing really well and he's really tiring out, we want to say, okay, let's just chill. Let's not push him too hard. So it's all very important stuff. And you do that so you set all kinds of goals for every single specialty. The OT has their goals, the PT, the speech therapist. Theo had orientation and mobility. He had vision therapy. There's always a school psychologist that's there. The school nurse is there. All these people talk about Theo, and then at the very end, we say, okay, well, not the very end. Then we talk about supplemental aids and services. So does he require one-to-one aid instruction? So, somebody who is going to help him navigate this whole education system because he can't do it himself. Someone who will keep him safe, somebody who will help to get him on his feet and help him. He can't feed himself. Okay, so somebody to help feed him. And at the very, very end is placement. And the reason this is a really important one too is that there's actually, this is what the law says. They have to go through this process. So if you ever walk into an IEP situation and you say to them, I do not want him in Mrs. So-and-so's class next year. I want him in this class. I don't want him in the special day class. I want him fully included in a general education curriculum. And they say, okay, we'll talk about that later. And you're like, no, I want to talk about that now. And some people get very, very upset because they want to talk about it and they feel like they're not being heard. And that's not really why. The reason is we can't talk about placement until we've talked about what does he need, how are we going to meet those needs, what are the goals, and what are the services. And then at the very end, we say, okay, where are we doing this? And so that's why that has to happen. And okay, not to belabor anymore because this is the last IEP slide. I would just say these are some tips. And it would be, like I said, bring a friend or a family member, somebody who can take notes, or an advocate who is willing to be a collaborative advocate who can really help us to meet, some sort of a resolution. They say that sometimes the best kind of negotiations are the ones where nobody gets everything they want, but everybody leaves feeling like they've been heard and they've gotten enough, right? But sometimes when, there are challenging school systems, there are also challenging caregivers. I mean, we all have our challenges. Some of us are kind of playing out our grief sometimes with, within the education system. And so there's something called alternative dispute resolution, which is like mediation. There is mediation. And then at the very end, there's something called due process. And that's really what a due process complaint is when you're taking your school district to court. I can tell you that 75% of due process complaints result in the favor of the school district. And that's not because it's not a worthy endeavor. It's because honestly, if a school system, if the district is truly at fault, they're not going to wait for a due process. They're not going to put the state through that because if they know they're going to lose, they're going to settle with you ahead of time. So it seems like statistically they always win, but that's actually not the case. Okay, so how are we doing for time right now? Because I don't want to go too far over, and I think I have. But I'm going to hand this over to Diana, and she's going to talk a little bit more about team building.
You're about right.
Oh, perfect.
I turned it. Do you want to do that one? Sure. So we're going to talk a little bit more about team building because this is a really essential point especially when your child is younger. I think it's really something that a lot of us don't do when our children are younger. We're kind of out there battling alone, or so we think. So I think a lot of us kind of take this part for granted. So who is on your life team? Now, we're not talking about that IEP team. We might be talking about the medical team, which is kind of what I put up there. But always, whatever team you have, that warrior needs to be in the middle, right? That child, that individual, that adult, whoever they are, they need to be in the center of whatever you're doing. So the family needs to also be at the top of that team. And then you need to look at who are all those key players. And there's a reason that I have all these people listed. Okay, I put down, I just threw some names in here. I have the neurologist or the epileptologist. I have a teacher. I have therapists. I have social workers. But also on this team could be your next door neighbor, your mother-in-law, right? It could be your best friend. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, because you always use the same cashier because she's really patient and she's really kind and she knows that your loved one is going to demand a lot of attention while you're in her line and is going to be pulling stuff out of the cart, and it's just going to take a little bit longer, and she's just really patient with how things go. Quite honestly, we use the same cashier at Walmart if she's working. She's a lady that has known Billy for a long time, and he uses that woman. He goes through her line if he's with his staff person as well, because if he is at Walmart and he goes through that line and he's with somebody that she doesn't know, she's not going to let him leave the store without calling me to make sure he's okay. Okay? It's a safety net. So those kind of familiarities, that kind of social networking, that's important. This is a life team. And knowing that you have a team built, knowing that everybody is on that same page is so important. So it plays a role, like I said, in ensuring safety, in making sure that everybody has that person's safety in mind. And that includes safety from seizures, safety from, predators, safety from, whatever might be in place. But also working on goals, having similar goals in mind, knowing that everybody wants the same thing for your loved one, whatever that might be, and making progress. Okay, you can't have somebody saying, whether it's, the neurologist saying you need to work on this, and your primary care physician saying, well, we need to work on that. You need to make sure that everybody's working on the same or similar goals. And last but not least, you need, as a parent, you need to make sure that everybody is working at supporting that whole family. You, your significant other, your extended family, your other children, if you have other children. I think it's just really essential. We tend to lose sight of the fact that we are more than just that warrior and that those parents or those caregivers. It's really easy to lose sight of that because we get really focused on doing the best we can do and making sure that we're making the right decisions and doing the right things. And I'm not telling you not to do that. I want you to do that because it does make a difference. But I think it's important to keep those other pieces in place too, to not lose sight of the fact that you're important and the rest of your family is important as well. So did you want to add something? I heard you take a breath. Okay. No, yes, some great art going on at this front table. So family support is essential for supporting your warrior. This is something that I teach in my job every day. This is my role in the state of Pennsylvania. The Wing Spread Report, which, believe it or not, is a national report, it came from a conference in 2011 that took place in Wisconsin, where they brought together families, individuals with intellectual disability and autism, community members, and professionals, and they said, what do families need in order to feel supported, in order to support individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism, with special needs of all kinds? And they came up with 3 areas that needed support. This is what families needed in order to be successful. And in order to be successful, they needed to have discovery and navigation. They needed information. They needed to be able to find the resources that they needed in order to support their loved one. They needed to find out that what was it? Kids waivers for kids, or waivers for kids. Kidswaivers.org. They needed to find out what Medicaid was like in their state. They needed to know whether or not they were eligible for nursing. They needed to know where the best epilepsy centers were. They needed those resources, okay? And they needed to know connecting and networking. They needed to know where there was an LGS foundation and how to connect with other parents who were going through similar things. And they needed the goods and services. They needed to know how to get a caretaker to help them, how to get the resources that they needed to get them through every day. And if those 3 things were taken care of, if those 3 areas were taken care of, that family could be appropriately supported. And when that family was appropriately supported, the individual child did better. So I think that's something that as a family we need to think about. In the long run, if we can do these things for ourselves, our children are going to do better. And this was found to be true back in 2011. And the new reports that are out from the RAISE reports, these are really important pieces of information as families we need to know. So the key things that I take away from all the meetings that I have to attend is, don't hesitate to ask questions of anybody that is on your team. All right, any of those doctors, those teachers, those social workers, your friends, your neighbors, whatever. Don't hesitate to ask questions. If there's a word you don't know, don't hesitate to say, can you explain to me exactly what that means? I was teasing just a few minutes ago. I attended the genetics thing, and I was writing down all the words I wasn't really sure about so that I could look them up on Google when I got back up to the room. But don't hesitate to ask questions.
Can I just add one thing to that too? I don't know if my
Turn it, you might have to turn it on.
No, I think How about that? So I've already been guilty of it in this talk, but I did this whole advocacy training years ago. And part of the advocacy training was that anytime somebody used an acronym, people had to kind of shout out to them, acronym. And you'd say, oh, I'm sorry, yes, PT is physical therapist. OT is occupational therapist. And I think in this conference, I think we have to do the other thing that they told us to do when I was doing this advocacy training, which is use the microphone, because we're recording things. So if you guys have questions later on, make sure ask to speak into the microphone. But yes, always ask people, because you are going to have, like I said about the alphabet soup thrown at you all the time, you're going to have that thrown at you all the time, and it never seems to end. So just say, I don't know what that is, and the person is usually kind of embarrassed, actually, for using it and assuming, rather than you being embarrassed for asking.
Great point. Great point. So this next bullet point is really important. So research the Parent Training and Information Center in your state. So sometimes you will just see them referred to as a PTI center. Every state has one. They go by different names. The contracts are awarded to different entities in each state, but they are federally funded, so there has to be one in every state, and their role is to make sure that parents are educated on how their children are supposed to be educated through special education. Most of them are really wonderful. Most of them do a really good job. They just don't always reach everybody. And that's the problem. It's one of those things where if you don't know they're there, you don't know to ask for help from them. I mean, to be perfectly honest, the one in my state is called the Peel Center. Parent Education, Advocacy, and Leadership, which does a phenomenal job. But would you know to look that up? Maybe not. They've been around for like 25 years, but yeah. So it's one of those kinds of things that you need to look up. So a parent training and information center in your state. A lot of times they have great handouts, they have acronym lists, they have those kinds of things that can really make your job easier. They can help you really take those steps forward, learning a lot about special education. This next one, great commercial. Stay connected with the LGS Foundation. That's Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, for any of you in here who don't know that, okay? Foundation, and a local ambassador, if you have one in your state. Not all states have one, but any of you who want to be one, you can raise your hand now. Jennifer will take your name.
Come to me afterwards. We'll talk.
And get connected with resources as much as possible. I know right now it seems really overwhelming. You have a young child and you are juggling not just LGS and not just school, and I say just, but you are juggling insurance, and maybe you're juggling Social Security, and you are juggling, marriage, maybe. And marriage is tough, or single parenthood. And
other children.
I was going to say, you're juggling other children. Maybe you're juggling soccer camp or, art classes or whatever else is going on. Maybe you're still in school. Maybe you have a full-time job on top of everything else. You're juggling all those pieces. It's really hard to do. But look for resources, because sometimes you stumble onto resources that can make things so much easier, because you find that right person or that right resource that clicks and something really magical happens, that you can make that connection. Somebody says to you, hey, if you do this with your insurance company, they'll approve X, Y, and Z. Or did you know that your hospital offers this? Or the school has this kind of therapy. Did you know that? And you had no idea. So it really can make a difference. Do what you can. Just another thing for me to add to your plate, right? So this is a tough one. Remember, life is not just about that next therapy. It's really easy. It's really easy to run from one therapy to the next. Can I have a show of hands for anybody who has found themselves in that situation? Yeah. Okay. I think we all have. Okay. I've done it off and on for years. Doctor's appointments, therapies. It's really important that you have a date night with your partner, or maybe that new person that you just met, with your best friend, whatever, that you have that night out, that you get away for a few minutes. A date night with non-disabled siblings. I had to really hit a point where I had to realize that I had to take a quick date night, even if it was to McDonald's, with my other children, one at a time, and sit down with them and say, hey, what's going on? Who's your best friend right now? Tell me what you guys talk about. Why are you so interested in Pokemon? That kind of thing. Family vacations. Don't give up on family vacations. You can make wonderful, wonderful dreams happen. You really can. Our last family vacation, I was telling Jen, it was a couple years ago. we got out to South Dakota, and Billy decided to crash and burn. And that was okay. He went toxic on 2 meds. We did withdrawal from a benzo and another medication while we were in South Dakota. We had to buy a transport wheelchair while we were out there. And we took him everywhere while we were in South Dakota, in a wheelchair, in withdrawal, seizing like a son of a gun, and he tells everybody it was the best vacation he ever had. Okay? He also showed off his tattoo to numerous women. But, you know, it made memories, and we didn't let it stop us, and we never talked to him about the fact that he was seizing the whole vacation. It just was. And don't forget day trips. LGS doesn't have us. Make time for extended family and friends. Let them get used to the situation. Make sure there's kids' adventures, playgrounds, splash parks, birthday parties. It's not always easy, but it's important. Don't forget hiking. You know, a lot of times people say, oh, my daughter uses a wheelchair, and so we can't do X, Y, and Z. There's some great hiking chairs that have wheelchair accessibility. And don't forget, sometimes just sitting on the porch and bird watching can be a great family activity. So, family doesn't always mean mom and dad. Friends can be family. We were talking earlier about therapists, or what was it Tracy was talking about? No, that was Landon's mom. Oh, okay. Was talking about therapists and having to make cookies, right? My best friend for the last 25 years is Billy's former physical therapist. He would not have anybody else let him do therapy on him, so she's still my best friend. Friends can be family. And you know that others don't always understand, right? But you have to work at it. You have to take it step by step. And how can we help them understand?
Can I add something there? Yeah, I'm on. So we've had this conversation before, but my best friend lives like 5 minutes from me. And one day I was just talking with her on the phone, and I said, you know, oh, I forgot to go to the grocery store, and we're out of milk or something, right, that I was out of. And I thought she was just going to pass out. She was like, that's what I can do for you. And I went, what? And she said, she's been struggling with trying to figure out how, because I'm not really good at letting people help me very much. Certainly with the heavy lifting, my son's big and all of that, so I don't want anybody to hurt themselves. And she said, anytime I'm at the grocery store, I'll just text you and say, what do you need? And, it could just be a bottle of wine. I don't know. Don't judge. But, I mean, it's just, it could be anything, right? And I said to her, you have to make sure, though, that I pay you. Because she's also the kind of person who would say, oh, don't worry about it. And I said, if you keep doing that, I won't ask you. And she said, okay, so now she insists that I pay her. She'll say, here's the bill. It was $13. And I'll be like, I'll Venmo her $13. And so just know that people want to help you. They really do. People look at us and they look at our lives and they think, if only I could just sort of, people don't turn away like they used to. They're more kind of, they're pained. If they get a pained look on their face, it's because they're just trying to figure out how they can fit into all of that. So just know that about other people. I truly believe that. And your experience may be different, but I hope it isn't.
So you've seen this diagram before, but the important thing is that you know who's on that team, right? You know that. So the important thing with communication is that you keep everybody on the same page. You be as open and honest with everyone as you are comfortable being. You may not want to tell the social worker every single thing that's happening, but you should give her or him the important information like Jen was talking about being exhausted or feeling like you can't just cope one more day. that you're really at the end of your rope. They need to know those family dynamics. It's vital that education understand the basics of what's happening medically, and that medical understand the basics of what you're trying to accomplish with education and therapy. If everybody doesn't understand what's happening in the other arena, then you're not going to accomplish what you could accomplish in the long run. And remember, all these systems essentially work in silos. They do not communicate. You are the conduit. You are what communicates from one to the other. So please help them understand what your vision is and how they need to communicate with each other. Also remember, your positivity is going to influence those people. If you go in and say, everything is horrible, it's horrible, we're never going to go anywhere, nothing is ever going to happen, that's going to be kind of the attitude everybody takes on. I'm not saying you have to be, Pollyanna and go in and say, life is wonderful, this is going to be great. But you have to say, there's things we can accomplish. We can work together as a team, and we can make this work. And you have to be positive. Your knowledge influences others. When you go in and say, oh, you know what, that was a myoclonic seizure, they're really fine, don't worry about it. Yeah, we've talked way too long.
I think
We're
I
way
just
too
want to make sure that we're aware of the time.
Yeah.
It's 4 o'clock.
And positive experiences and high expectations for your warrior, share those with everyone. It's so important that we all have high expectations. High expectations are what influences everyone else to have high expectations. So if you have high expectations, it's amazing that the people around you, what the expectations they will have for your loved one. I always expected Billy to be able to do all of the things that he's doing now. I mean, he's 38, he's still learning to read, okay? Is it still first grade? Yes. Is he still making progress? Absolutely. Is he going to continue to do that? Yeah, most likely. So, a communication book, video presentations, person-centered planning, and a one-page description. These are great ways to promote communication. A communication book or log. Ensure everyone has resources to identify seizures and types. Ensure everybody understands your seizure protocol. Keep emergency numbers handy. Stay updated on how school and therapies are going. Make sure that everybody in this communication log, in this book, has this information. Keep a copy of a one-page description, which we're going to talk about in a minute, in the book for substitutes, new team members, new doctors, whoever. There are video opportunities. Consider a video introduction of your warrior for meetings if there are new people. Use videos of seizure types to educate your team, and there's some great ones on the LGS website.
Yeah. I think Tracy talked about those earlier, and I highly recommend looking them up. They're real seizures, so just prepare yourself, but you probably see them all the time anyhow, so you'll know.
Right. And you can use those videos to demonstrate the high expectations for your warrior. So when you're introducing your warrior, show them doing things in the backyard.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So this is a one-page description. This is Billy's one-page description. I'm going to tell you real quick. It's got 3 parts, right? What people like and admire about me, which is things like, I know it's hard to read, it's very small. He's determined, he's strong, he's loving and caring. What's important to him, which is basically being valued, and Star Wars, Star Trek, Stargate, and Doctor Who. And his dog, who's named Princess Leia. And then some strategies for ways to support him. And down at the bottom there are things like keep me safe, know my seizure signs, and also to ask him to do things. Don't tell him to do things. He's an adult. Treat him like an adult. So these 3, giving this one-page description offers him the opportunity to meet new people, go places, do things, without me trying to explain him to people. So do you want to do Theo's real quick?
Yeah, I'll do Theo's real quick, but which is the next slide. You can change. Okay, so you probably can't see it very well, and this is from when Theo was 20, so he's now 22, and I haven't updated it, and I will. But I figure for these last few slides, I think people learn and engage more when they're busy, when they keep their hands busy. So that's what all this stuff in the middle of the table is for you guys. So if you would like, there's all these stickers and markers and all of that. You're going to start to develop your own one-page descriptions, but we're going to kind of go through the kind of stuff that needs to be or can be potentially in a one-page description. Like in Theo's, very similar to Billy's, we have, you know, what makes him happy, what's important to him, but I also include his family's vision, like what our vision is for Theo's future. And you can go up to it and read it and all of that because we're going to give you some time after we finish talking to get started on your one-page description. But this is something, and you can do whatever you want. You can include pictures, you can include drawings, just anything that really stands out. Like one of his sisters is a musician, so I might put just a picture of a guitar in the middle of his one-page description. This is your opportunity to be crafty and creative, and continue, Diana. I just wanted to get them started.
That's great. That's great. So ways that we've used a one-page description is to introduce Billy to new team members, to new staff. We've introduced him to new friends when he's made new friends, to give them things to talk about, ideas on how to support him, and to their families so that families understand how to support him. To help family and friends, like his brother's new girlfriends, things like that, to help them understand how to support. Interviewing new staff or new therapists. This is really important. Introducing to daycare or sitters. It really is a big help because then you don't have to go into all the details yourself. This is another example of kind of a one-page description. It's a seizure action plan. There's actually a couple on some of the tables. Also a good piece to add to your one-page description. This is, I believe, on the LGS?
It's on the LGS. That's the link. There's actually something called the Seizure Action Plan Coalition, and which we were part of. And now I think it's the Epilepsy Alliance that has taken on that. And this is just one example of a seizure action plan, but there are many out there. You can even just go to Google Images and come up with some that if they, just whatever resonates with you, obviously.
So the other thing that we use it for is medical emergencies. So it's got to have 3 parts, and that is what people know, and this is any profile, has to have at least 3 parts. Well, to any description has to have at least 3 parts. And that is what people need to know about me, what is important to me, and how to support me. And that can be changed to read what people need to know about me. So for an emergency or medical one-page description, we put down diagnoses, language or the way somebody communicates, their religion, emergency contacts, meds, and allergies. I know for most of you, you probably have to list all the meds on the back, but and then in that middle section, what's most important to me, and that could be ways to keep me calm. What's my favorite blanket, my favorite toys, what are my favorite foods, my favorite people? Maybe I will not stay calm unless mom is in the room with me. Maybe I want my little brother with me at all times. Maybe I'm really attached. What are my favorite stuffed animals or singers? What is something that somebody could start a conversation with me with if they have to do a test and they need a way to calm me down? And ways to support me. How do they explain blood work to me? How do they offer me choices? How do I show pain? I mean, it drives me crazy. They go to Billy all the time and they say, so how's your pain? Give me a number from 1 to 10. All right, how good are you at numbers from 1 to 10 for pain? I'm not, okay? Billy has no idea. He says 10, because that's the last number they said, right? Even the happy faces and sad faces, we don't do so good, you know? So I always give it a number for him, because that makes them happy. But yeah, he does not show pain that way. He shows pain because if he's having a seizure, he's hurting, okay? So what to do if I'm anxious? Do they have any hearing problems? Do they have visual problems? And are there behavioral supports that need to be put into place? So you can use this one-page description for an everyday event, like to introduce them to somebody, or maybe to help your family members understand them. Or you can use it for a medical situation, or you can do one for each.
Nice.
So this is ways we have used it for medical. Doctor's appointments, ambulance rides, introduction to emergency personnel, emergency department visits, and hospital stays. So the first thing that we're going to do is part 1. What people like and admire about me, if you're doing the generic, one page like an introduction, or what people need to know about me or my warrior if you're doing the medical, or both, if you're doing both. So I'm going to go down and walk around.
Yeah, and then if you need sort of inspiration or you want to just chat with us about it, and if you want to share with others, go for it. And you could do, and we're a small group, so you can make more than one. If you want to do a medical one, and then you want to do a one-page profile for the grandma or the babysitter, or a lot of our families too have loved ones who are like extended family members who are kind of not getting it. And maybe sometimes this is a nice way of explaining things to them. And like I said earlier about how we focus sometimes on the diagnosis, this is a way of helping direct people to the person. Oh, strengths, yes, would be like and admire. Oh. So, okay, yeah, okay, so what people like and admire about me, it could be, it could be what their strengths are. Like if you think of an IEP situation where they're talking, at the very beginning of an IEP, what I was saying earlier, when we're talking about present levels, they used to describe it as, strengths and areas of need. So strengths could be, he has the best laugh, and his laugh is infectious, and it always just, breaks the ice if there's a lot of tension. An area of need could be, he's not really, he hasn't accomplished the skill of holding a spoon in his hand yet. So a little hand over hand, but he's trying, so maybe hand over hand assistance in helping him pull the yogurt out of the bowl and into the mouth, that kind of stuff. And that's, of course, what people need to know about me is whatever you think is important. If I think of Theo, what people need to know about Theo is that he is just he's in his own little world a lot, and he rocks back, and he does a lot of rocking and a lot of hand flapping, but a lot of smiling and laughing. And it's, I think it's people stare at him sometimes, and that doesn't bother me in the slightest, because I find that, lucky them. That's my attitude. It's always like, lucky you. You get to see Theo. You get to meet him, his own special brand of person. So whatever you think is just something kind of fun and charming about them. Anyhow, I'm going to turn the mic off now, and we can just attack the craft.